Okay, yeah. So we did an activity last time when we met. We did a small activity to introduce this lesson, and in that activity, we slowly realized that there are two very important factors wherein your households are able to work properly. They are able to provide proper food for the people at home, and those two factors mainly were health and education. Unless and until we have healthy people, we are not going to have people who are able to work. And then we also went and learned about two cycles, that is the virtuous cycle and then the vicious cycle. The virtuous cycle is basically a good cycle wherein educated parents, they understand the importance of work, and once they understand the importance of work, they see an education, and they see to it that their children also receive equivalently good or maybe even better education, so that they are able to lead better and healthier, more prosperous, more fulfilling lives, and they create better human capital. And then on the other side, on the flip side, we have the vicious cycle, wherein uneducated parents many times they are stuck in a situation where they cannot get their children educated, and because of this, the cycle continues. Uneducated people come into the system and they are unable to come out of the situation, the bad situation in which they are stuck. So that was the vicious cycle. And then we went on to classify the activities into primary, secondary, and tertiary. We also learned about what activities come under primary activities, what are the activities which come under secondary activities, and what are the activities which come under the tertiary activities. So in this, we have two major parts of activities like market activities and non-market activities. Market activities are mainly those activities which are done for money. An activity which is done by a person and in place of that activity he earns money, it is called as a market activity. Whereas on the other side, we have non-market activities wherein many activities are not made for money. For example, a very good example of this is your mother, if she is a housewife, and many times housewives we see that there's plenty of work in the house. It's not easy work. There's plenty of work in the house. They need to wake up early, prepare food, they take care of the clothing, they take care of the food requirements. So much of work is there at home, and all this they do for zero remuneration, means they do not get paid for it. So this, it is not like your mother is not working at all. There's plenty of work at home, and obviously she doesn't get paid for this work, so it is classified as a non-market activity. And also, there are farmers who produce for their own requirement. There is grains, they produce vegetables, they produce fruit, and many times they use it for their own requirement without selling it into the market. So this also is classified as non-market activities. Wherever the activity is done for the benefit of the people or the family living at home without any kind of remuneration or money in return, that is called as a non-market activity. So is that clear? Market activities, non-market activity, primary, secondary, and tertiary activities. Are those clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So any point of time in economics, whenever you have any doubts, please do stop me and ask your doubts over there. Right?
So can you give me an concept non-market activity?
Any other example of non-market activities? Yeah, there are many non-governmental organizations where people do, voluntary kind of work. Uh, there are many charitable hospitals also where people do voluntary kind of work. So wherever this voluntary kind of work is there, and there is no remuneration paid for that, that also comes under this non-market activity. A market activity is purely where work is performed, and for that work, money is paid as compensation. Any work which is done without any form of compensation is classified as a non-market activity. So voluntary work also comes under non-market activity. Okay. Okay. So quality of population. Literacy rate, health and skills determine the quality of a population. Illiterate and unhealthy population can be a liability for the economy. Literate and healthy population can be made into an asset for the economy. Literate and healthy population contributes towards GDP of a country. This is extremely simple to understand. Now, all of you at present, you are undergoing schooling, you are in the school system. And once you finish the school system, you will go for higher education. You enter college, you enter university, and then once that is done, you come out and you are ready to enter the world of work. You come out into the job market. So that is your entire, learning cycle as of now. So this particular entire process that you go through, your schooling and then your education, and after the schooling, the college and the university, and then you come out finally into the world of work. This is all made to ensure that the quality of workforce which is there, which is available for contributing towards the economy of India, is a quality workforce. I cannot expect the same kind of a quality from an uneducated person. The quality that you would have as a person working in either any industry or any factory, or maybe definitely, obviously, also you could become entrepreneurs, start your own businesses, and contribute to the economy in that way. The quality which is there over there might not be the same as an uneducated population. We have seen that huge populations of countries can be either an asset or it could be a liability for a country. A very good example is China. China has a huge population, extremely huge population, and definitely, of course, maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, we would be overtaking that country in terms of population. But they have had a huge population for many years, and they know how to use this entire population for the development of the economy of the country. The workforce is so huge; they have been able to afford cheap labor to most of the world markets, and that is the reason why this Chinese products are flooded in most of the markets around the world. It's not only India. You can see any European country, you can go to the Americas also. Most of the products that are available in these countries, they are all labeled as made in China. This made in China label has become so popular mainly because of the workforce, the labor force which is available in China, and they have made sure, they have ensured that this labor force is available for them to give cheap products to the entire country. So this is how they have used their labor force. It is now India's labor force would definitely be used in a different way. Our labor force is had the benefit or had the plus point of being educated in English. That is the reason almost 15 years back why technology was a huge plus point, was a huge industry in India. We harnessed that, and there were large number of call centers. All these places opened up in India, wherein they would service companies which were located overseas in different places. So different countries will use their workforce in different ways. So the literacy rate definitely is a huge plus point. Illiterate population are not going to contribute to the economy, but literate population will definitely contribute to the economy. It is not only education but also health. If you have an unhealthy population, this population is not going to contribute. The population will be sick, and the country will be spending more money in taking care or bringing up the health of the population as compared to a healthy population which can contribute more and by working more, giving more value addition to the GDP of the country. So I think most of you would be having a doubt now, what is this GDP? Can anyone, does anybody have a doubt of what is GDP?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
No, means, do you want me to explain what GDP is, or do you already know what GDP is?
Sir, I
Gross,
don't know.
gross domestic product.
Yeah, correct. It is gross domestic product, but what is the meaning of that gross domestic product?
Sir,
We,
total of value added created in Sir, gross domestic product.
correct, Re Baba, gross domestic product, that I know. Correct, that full form is correct. But what is the meaning of that? There must be some meaning, no? When we talk about GDP, it means the total production in the entire country. Gross means a total. I am not going to reduce my expenditure from that total. Hmm. That means gross. If any of you have your own small businesses, or if anybody owns a small shop, you would know that. You can ask your father also, whoever is working in that small shop or who has it. The total net sales that happens from that shop, the total sales that happen from that shop on a particular day, that is called as gross sales. Now from that sales, I might reduce the employees that salary that I would be paying for my people. I might reduce the expenditure on electricity, on rent, on telephone expenses. Different expenses are there. But before the reduction of all these expenses, the total sales that happens in a particular shop is called as gross sales. Similarly, when we look at the country as a whole, the total production, it could be production of food grains, could be production of vegetables, it could be production of mineral output of iron ore, different kinds of processing of these things. The entire total production that comes out in a country in a given year, that is what is called as gross domestic product. Means the country has produced so much in terms of value, that is called as gross domestic product. So over here, the more able our workforce is, the more able our people are, the more educated and more healthy our people are, that is going to increase the production of the country. That increase would reflect in the increase in the gross domestic product of a country. Okay. If you compare the GDP of India with the GDP of China, you will see a huge variation in this GDP. Normally, India has a GDP of somewhere around 7 to 8%. Even 0.1% variation also is very huge because of our large population. But if you compare that with the GDP of China, which would be in the terms of 10 to 11%, there would be almost 3% of difference. I'm giving these rough figures. Okay, the official figures would be different, but these are rough figures that I'm giving. This huge difference is mainly because they are able to use their population to a more positive effect as compared to India. So that is the difference why you will see the difference in GDP between countries. So is this part about GDP clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Of course, in your 10th standard, this gross domestic product is explained in much more detail. You will go more further into detail about gross domestic product. Right. So now let us take the first part, the most essential part, that is education. Education enhances the literacy level and skill level of a person. It also helps in enriching the culture of the society. Presence of educated persons in the society indirectly benefits the illiterate person as well. Government has taken various steps to spread education among the people. Government strives to provide universal access to education. It also makes various plans to increase the retention of students. Special emphasis is given on girls' education. See, education in our country has always been a challenge. One problem is the huge amount of population that we have, and the second problem is the poverty levels in our country. Because of the levels of poverty, many people try to send their children to work rather than to send their children for getting educated. I also, gave a small story about the maid servant who was working in my home when I was a kid. If you all remember that, how this boy had to drop out from school. So, education in India is a big challenge. The government has many programs. The one of the latest programs which has come up since the last 4 or 5 years is the right to education, wherein they try to ensure and see that elementary education till the age of 14 is made a right of that child, compulsory and comprehensive elementary education. Another part is seeing that the education of girls happen, because if you see, the girls' education, if any household, the woman of that particular household, if she is educated, then definitely you will see that the culture in that house is totally different. If we have uneducated women in the house, the culture would be totally different. So educated women play a very important role in enhancing the entire outlook of that family towards education. This is a very important and prime factor which comes into culture as well. So once India got its independence, after independence, we took a process of creating 5 year plans. In the last chapter of your history last year in 8th standard, you would have learned about these 5 year plans, right? So in these five, the first 5 year plan which was there immediately after independence, in that 151 crores was the amount of rupees that was allocated towards education. That was the first 5 year plan in the year 1948. After this has increased to 43,825 crores in the 10th 5 year plan, that is after 50 years of independence. From 151 crores, the expenditure by the government towards education has increased to 43,825 crores. The expenditure education was 0.64% of the GDP in 1950-51, and whereas this has increased to 3.98% of the GDP in 2002-2003. What this means is, out of the total value that is created in our country, that is the GDP, out of the total value that is created, out of that, only 3.98% of that goes towards expenditure on education. This actually is a very small value, okay? Very small value. If you see the size of India, there should be at least 10% of the GDP going into the education sector. That is the amount of expenditure the government should be making. But unfortunately, that is not happening. Due to constant efforts, the literacy rate has grown from 18% in 1951 to more than 70% in 2011. So 2011 was the last census which was taken for our country. That is the reason these figures are there over there. So the literacy rate in India was as low as 18% in 1915. Means only 18% of the population of India were literate in 1951. And now, in the year 2011, that 18% has risen up to more than 70%. So, if you ask me, this is a very good figure. This is a very good number, very good percentage for our country. Because looking at the situation and just a period of 60 years, getting this percentage from 18 to 70 is a huge task. And seeing that this percentage has increased to 70% is a very good achievement for our country. Literacy rate is higher among males compared to females. And Kerala is the state with more than 90% literacy rate, while some states have extremely low literacy levels. Government has recently launched a program which is called as Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. This is another name for the RTE or the Right to Education. to spread education to remotest parts of the country. Under this program, all children under 6 to 14 years of age are given elementary education, means the middle school education, which is there, that is compulsorily given to the children between the age of 6 to 14 years. Government also provides midday meals in government schools so that children of poor people can attend the school. Midday meals has helped many children from poor families to attend school. Uh, can anyone tell me why this midday meal is so important? What is the significance of this midday meal? Yeah, any student, can you tell me what is the importance of this midday meal? Why is so much importance given to midday meal scheme by the government? For the health of the child. Priyanka says for the health of the child. Okay, yeah, that is one factor, but there is a bigger factor. That is one more bigger factor why midday meal scheme is so important. Equality among students, unfortunately, no, Tanushree, not much of equality. Come on, students, come on, come on. I want you to think real hard and tell me why this midday meal scheme is so important. What about others? We have 39 students and only two students have answered me. Come on, I want answers from others. Come on. Jeevan, for the health of the child, it is something which goes even beyond health also. It is not only health because the poor students cannot afford quality food. Yes, poor students cannot afford quality food. And what would happen if these midday meals were not offered in the schools?
The students will not come to school.
Absolutely right. I don't know who said. I think that was Ayush. Uh, absolutely right. These midday meal schemes are so important because the parents are now sending their children to school just for those meals. At least my child is able to get a. Absolutely right, Shreyas. The students will not come to school if the meals are not provided. See, this midday meal scheme was first started in Tamil Nadu, and they saw it was a huge success because the number of enrollments or the number of students joining government schools suddenly increased because when they started giving offering midday meals, so the poor families, they send their children to work, and the child goes to some kind of work, normally it is labor kind of work, and they earn a few rupees in that, and this is used for the food. So now what is happening is with the midday meal scheme, the child does not go for work. The parents send their child to school because he gets to eat in that school. So at least the parent does not have to worry about that child's food, and in the process the child also gets educated over there. He gets receives a government education, so the both the things are covered over there, the education of the child, and also he is getting good meals, healthy meals for them to eat in the school. So that's the reason why these midday meals are so important, and it is a huge success all over the country. And because of these midday meals all over the country, we are seeing that the number of enrollments in these schools have increased, the government schools have increased. Now another problem that we are facing because of the present lockdown in the schools is these children are not going to school, and when the children are not going to school, obviously they don't get meals also are there, and when they don't get meals, definitely their parents want them to go and work somewhere else. Because so now most of these children who had joined schools earlier for the meals, they have all now dropped out from the schools and they are going to work somewhere. So once this entire COVID situation is over, and once the schools start for properly and full-fledged school starts, getting these children, poor children, back into the schools again is going to be a huge challenge for the government. So that is the significance, that is the importance of these midday meals. It is not just like a meal which is being provided to everybody. It is of immense importance to this particular category of India's population. Is that clear to everybody about the midday meals?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. So the 10th five-year plan, that was roughly around after 50 years of independence, was focused on increasing the enrollment in higher education from 6 to 9%. This 3% also is a huge number. It might seem like a very small number for you on paper, but actually in terms of population, this is a huge number. The strategy is to increase access, quality, and adoption of state specific curriculum to motivate enrollment in higher education. Over here, mainly they are trying to get education in the local language, so people are more comfortable going to school. Vocational courses are also offered, and use of information technology is being maximized to attain the goal. Vocational courses are those courses which are offered by school which are aimed towards employment. Vocational courses mainly are aimed towards employment. It's a practical kind of a course where people have to work with their hands and learn a particular skill. So these vocational courses would range from, I don't know, would range from plumbing, carpentry, pottery, uh, electrical work. All these kinds of work, they all come under vocational courses. Even data operator for computers, all these are vocational courses. So it is mainly aimed towards seeing that once they finish this course, they are able to work in some place and earn a livelihood. So vocational courses are offered, and use of information technology is being maximized to attain the goal. The 10th plan also focuses on distant education, coverage of formal, non-formal, and IT education. So lots of things have been revamped in the 10th plan to see that a more modern approach is taken towards education. So over here, right in front of you, is a chart of the number of schools, colleges, students, and teachers in our country till the right from 1950 till 1999, about 50 years. So if you see the number of colleges from 750, it has increased to 11,000 in the last 50 years. Number of universities has increased from 30 to 238. The number of students has increased exponentially from 2 lakh 63 to 74 lakhs in the last 50 years, and the number of teachers also has increased from 24,000 to 3 lakh 42,000. So there is progress, but maybe this progress is not as fast as it was expected to be. So let us learn about Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in detail. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan SSA is an Indian government program aimed at the universalization of elementary education in a time bound manner. As mandated by the 86th Amendment to the Constitution of India, making free and compulsory education to the children of ages between 6 and 14, estimated to be 205 million. That is the number of children who are there between this age. A fundamental right. So, right to education now is a fundamental right, like the right to equality, the right to freedom, your religious rights, or along with all this, we have the right to education, which is now a fundamental right for the citizen of India. This program was pioneered by Atal Bihari Vajpayee, our late Prime Minister. Okay, so this is the introduction to Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. We will go more into detail of Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan in the later classes. I want all of you to tell me now if you have any doubts. Any doubts by anybody?
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir.
Yes, tell me.
Sir, how can India beat China in GDP?
How can India beat China in GDP? Very good question. We can definitely beat China in GDP unless and until there are two key sectors which heavy amount of investment has to be done, and another third sector. See, there are three sectors which are going to directly reflect for GDP. There is education, there is health, and then there is infrastructure. Unless and until the government mainly focuses on purely only these three segments, it would not be possible to beat China. The expenditure which is required to be done in these three sectors is very, very huge. See, today you will see that the quality of education or the quality of the schools in government schools is not so great. You will also see that the quality of government hospitals again is not so great. So the question over here is what is the government doing about that? Unless and until the entire outlook of the people change, it is not going to happen. So we need to have world class government schools, we need to have world class government hospitals, and world class infrastructure. Only then we can be on the path to beat China, because that is what China has done. This is exactly the path that China has taken. We need to take that path. Only then we can see that we are in a position to beat China in GDP. Otherwise, for the next 15 to 20 years, it might not be possible.
After 15 to 20 years.
Come again, Neil?
After 15 to 20 years.
After 15 to 20 years, it depends on what is the government over there, what kind of people are there in the government, what is the outlook of the government. Really cannot say. What is the outlook of China? What is going to happen to China? Maybe if you see Chinese population in the last 10 years has been on a declining trend. They had a one child policy in China for so many years. And in the last 5 to 10 years, their population has actually been on a declining trend. So now again they have gone back to the policy of you can have two children if you want. So there are many variables which are to be taken into calculation to maybe see that we are in a position to beat the GDP. Really, after 15 to 20 years, we don't know what is going to happen, and even present situation is also such a bad situation that the GDP has actually come down because of the COVID lockdowns and all these things. People had not predicted this. So it is very questionable. We really cannot say what is going to happen after the 15 to 20 years. Okay, any other doubts by anyone?
Sir, USA is having the high GDP. Yes, sir.
Yes, obviously, USA has a very high GDP because it is a developed nation. See, nations are always categorized into three. A developed nation, a developing nation, and a underdeveloped nation. So right after independence, we were in the category of underdeveloped nation, wherein we have pulled ourselves out of that, and now we're in the category of developing nations. Whereas US and many of the European countries, they are already in the developed nation category. Their GDPs are extremely high because see they are in a way very very ahead position. The race for them began very very early. They have got their independence more than 200 years back. The industrial revolution in these countries have started in the 19th century itself, whereas in India we have started our industries, major industrial contribution only after our independence. So our industries are hardly like 70 or 80 years old, not more than that, whereas they have industries which are more than 200 years old. So you need to see, you need to take all these things into contribution. It is not like USA, though the population is lesser than India, but still they are having higher GDP because they are an extremely evolved and extremely advanced economy as compared to India. You cannot compare the economy of US with the economy of India because that is already a developed nation, whereas we are still in the process of developing. We still have a very long way to go.
Yes, sir. So when the country called the development,
When will the country be called as a developed country? There is no actual measure